Hey guys, today we're going to do a 2JZ-GE VVT-i going into an IS200 plug and play using a manual gearbox. So let's get into it. Right, as I said, this is a 2JZ-GE VVT-i going into an IS200 plug and play using a manual gearbox. Now this one in particular is a 2JZ-GE VVT-i from a GS300, specifically 98 to 2000. And again, it is using a J160 manual gearbox. All right, so what we're gonna do today, well, first of all, we're gonna go through the whole layout of the harness, show you where everything plugs in. It is really nice and simple. And then what we'll do is run into the testing of the harness, which is made up of a pit just with the ignition on and a section with the engine actually running. But first of all, what we're going to do is, you can see here, it is an adapted harness. So it's an original harness that we've taken in. We've completely stripped it down, cleaned it, removed everything it needed removing, and added in what needed adding in. So let's take a look at a few photographs of that, and we're back in a second. Right, okay, so just a heads up, at the end we'll have like a complete bunch of photographs, and we'll show you like before and after, when we started and when we finished, etc. for that. So let's jump into what we're first going to be doing today, and that is the layout of the harness. Now what we're going to do, we're going to start right here at the ECU box. So let's jump into it. So this obviously looks a little bit of a mess because the engine's so high up and you can't get in, etc. I'm going to quickly cut to a photo of what it looks like when everything is in and tucked away nicely inside the ECU box. So there you go, there you go. So you can see once everything's in, it's all nicely tucked away. Everything is sorted, tucked away, really nice and neat. Lid goes on, no problem at all, okay? So in the ECU box, we do have the ECU that's going over here. So hopefully you can see all of that down there. There you go. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plugs there and a 6th plug over there. Really nice and simple. They only plug into one section, so you can't get them wrong. So don't need to stress about that. And the way the wire is routed, you'll see that it kind of only works in one way. That leads me then onto our little patch section over here. So basically what this does is it interfaces with the two IS200 plugs that are left behind when you remove the engine from the IS200. Going down to here, we then have our 3 body plugs. Again, super nice and simple. All these are different plugs, so you can't get them in the wrong place. This white one is going into the gray section over there. This black one is going into the black plug over there. And this cream colored one is going into the blue plug over there. So again, only 3 plugs, really super simple. We then have a junction connector down here that can again be tucked away down there. So you might have seen that in the photographs over there. Right, add-ons that we put on. So this is our ATEMU device. Okay, so this is what's going to fool the ECU into thinking that an automatic transmission is still in place and working as it should. We then have our MPX converter. So this converts the MPX data from the GS300 to the IS200 to keep everything inside the vehicle working correctly. Okay, and that's it from the inside of the ECU box over there. So moving along, you then get to a rubber grommet over there, which goes into this U-shaped section that you see over here. And it's obviously nice and rubber. When you put the lid on, it does seal it from the elements. Just after that, we have a breakout section over here, and there's a couple of things that come out over there. So first of all, we have our igniter plug. So if you've seen an IS300, the igniter lives over here. So again, that's why that is facing in that direction over there. Then also coming out here, we then have our resistors. So these are 3 resistors that get rid of 3 codes for the automatic transmission being removed. So it's to make sure that we have absolutely 0 codes for automatic transmission not being there. These do get really hot. That's why we don't put them inside the ECU box. We leave them on the outside so you can mount them down there. Ideally, obviously I'm not a metal worker, but ideally something like an aluminum plate, you can then just rivet these onto there. They do have holes on there, so you can mount them onto an aluminum plate, and you can tuck them down the side there. So we've made them quite nice and long so you can get them out the way. Obviously, if cool air goes over them, it's absolutely fantastic. It's not a problem at all. Okay, but again, that's why they're not inside the ECU box. If they were inside the ECU box, they'd get way too hot and they'd start melting stuff. Okay, so just be aware of that with these. And I do mean they get super hot, like as in you can't touch them kind of hot. So don't freak out if they do get really, really hot. That is completely normal. Again, if you can put them on an aluminum plate, that'll dissipate some of the heat from them. Obviously, they do have a heat sink built into them as well. So if you suck them down here on like the side of the engine over there, just tuck them away there. They have a lot of airflow over them, which is absolutely fantastic when you're driving. Okay. Right, so that's that section over there. Moving along, a little bit of rubber here, and then we have a little mount here, which you'll see when you put the inlet manifold on where that goes. I've got the original from the inlet manifold, but basically it's this bad boy over here. So again, the harness would go through there. In this case, the engine harness has already got it on. This is my existing one from my old engine, but that goes over there. Okay. Moving along from there, we then get into another plastic section that goes that away and that away over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go this way first, then we'll come back and we'll go that way. And there's actually a bunch of stuff that goes down, which we'll take a look at in a minute as well. Okay, so you can see the plastic over there. It pops out over there. We then have a breakout section over here. This is actually just cable tied here. It actually comes out over there. But anyway, what comes out over here, you're going to have your TPS plug, which you're going to see in a minute when the throttle body goes on. I take the inlet manifold off so you can see everything as we go through it, so you can see how everything goes on when you guys fit it back in again. Next up, we have our noise filter plug, and our noise filter looks like this, so your engine should have it on there already. Then this one, which is cable tied back a little bit there, as you can see why, that goes to your oil control valve for the VVT. So remember, the VVT-i is only on the inlet cam, not on the exhaust cam. That's why you've only got one of these valves on the inlet side. Okay. Also coming out here, we have injector 1 and injector 2. Okay. Now what you probably notice is these are the original plugs because they're still good, but you've got gray, brown, gray, brown, gray, brown. So what Toyota have done for you very nicely is they've swap the colors of the plug so you know exactly you're in the correct order. So it should always be gray, brown, gray, brown, gray, brown. Okay. So again, injector 1, injector 2. Moving along there, we then get to this big piece of plastic that gets mounted down there and there. I nearly forgot actually, this piece here gets mounted down there with a bolt as well. So that's how that stays in place. Right. This little section that comes out here, that's going to be in injector 3 and injector 4. Really nice and simple and straightforward. Moving along to here, and we then have a little breakout coming out in this section over here. That's going to go to injector 5, injector 6. It's also going to go to your cam sensor, which is over there. And then lastly, it's going to go to a vacuum solenoid valve, which again, you'll see when the inlet manifold is on. But just to show you now quickly, it's this one over here, basically. And that's the one that goes from your charcoal canister. Okay. Now, this is where we've added something in. So you can see here's a new harness section that's been completely rebuilt. And that is for your gearbox, okay? So we have put a 4-pin DTM connector there because a lot of guys want to change gearbox eventually. So obviously what we've done there is we've made sure that if you guys ever want to change your gearbox, we can simply just send you out another sub harness of whatever gearbox you've swapped to. So you don't have to worry about making any changes, having to cut anything and so on. You just unplug that one there and we can swap it out. R154, BMW, whatever it is, we can make it work, okay? Right, now then, also in this little plastic section over there, you'll see just popping down through there is another section of wires that pop out over here. So I'm gonna try and see if I can move the camera around in such a way that I can get in here. But yeah, you can see them all popping out over here where my finger is. And the first one is gonna be an earth strap. That's gonna bolt down over there. The next one is for your ACIS valve. So that's gonna go over there. Also coming out here is gonna pop down over there and it's gonna go to your knock sensor that's over there and your starter solenoid that is over there, okay? So that's those sections over there. Really, really nice and simple. Nothing else can plug into anything else, so you can't really get it wrong, okay? Just make sure that everything that comes out of here goes backwards and not forwards, because obviously we have another knock sensor over there. But the way it's designed, if you plug the starter plug in, that knock sensor will not reach over there anyway, so that's perfectly fine, okay? Right, so that's that section over there. Now what we can do is, while I'm down here, you'll see just at the front over here, there's another section that pops down over there. See if I can get it to focus. Now, comes down a little bit and breaks out into a few sections. So number one, we have our coolant temperature sensor. See if I can get it to focus. So there's our coolant temperature sensor. Down there, we've got our knock sensor. That's the gray plug that you can see over there. And get a better focus of it. There you go, that one over there. We then have another earth strap that's going to bolt onto the inlet manifold over there. We then also have this one, which goes down to our oil pressure switch over there. We have this one, which I'm holding here, and that goes down to our oil level sensor, which is in there. And then we've got this section over here, which goes to your aircon pump. So again, everything is gonna work as you expect it to, okay? And just be aware, that temperature sensor you won't have. There'll be like a blanking brass bolt in there. That's one that I fitted on. So just make sure it doesn't look confusing for you guys when you're already there. All right, so we've gone that way, we've gone down. Let's pop over the top over here. Right, so gonna pop over here. It's gonna sit in this little crevice over here, and we're gonna have one breakout section over here. Now then, that's gonna go to coil there, move along, breakout over there to go to that coil, move along, breakout over there to go to that coil. Okay, now remember, this is a wasted spark system. As you can tell, it's only got 3 coils, and each coil is connected to another spark plug. So this coil is directly over a spark plug, and then you have this which goes there. So it's firing 2 spark plugs at the same time. So that means it's a little bit weird. You would think that this is ignition 1 because it's the front, but it's actually not the case because it's actually over cylinder 2. See, there's cylinder 1. So in actual fact, this is ignition 1 because it fires 6 and 1 at the same time. So you can see that cord runs all the way down there to the back. So 6 and 1, they fire at the same time. Then this is actually ignition 2 because it fires 2, and then you'll see this lead pops down through there, and that goes to coil 5. Okay, so 2 and 5, they fire at the same time. And this one in the middle is actually ignition 3 because this one does 3 and 4. Okay, so the firing order is 1 and 6 together, 2 and 5 together, 3 and 4 together. If you've seen a firing order of a 2JZ, you'll know that that makes sense because it's 1, 5, 3, 6, 2, and then 4. Okay, but if you group them together for wasted spark, it'll be 1 and 6 together, 2 and 5 together, 3 and 4 together. Okay, so just bear that in mind. It looks very weird, but that's ignition 1, that's ignition 2, that's ignition 3. Okay. All right, so moving along from there, we then have another piece of this carries on. Well, that carries on down here, goes this way and out towards here. So let's take a look at what we have over here. So again, this pops out, comes down through here. There's a little bracket over here. There's usually something sort of mounted on there, I think. This can obviously slide up and down. You can move it to wherever it needs to be. Sorry, these came all on the original harness, and because they were in good condition, we've obviously put them back. Sometimes you'll see on my other videos, we don't have all of these pieces, but that's because we don't get sent them, so we can't put them back in the correct position, okay? And then we move down to here, and there's a breakout section down at the bottom here. It then goes to our crank sensor, which is over there. It goes to our 3-pin alternator connector, which is over there. It goes to our bank 1 sensor 1, okay? So that's bank 1. So bank 1 is 1, 2, 3. Bank 2 is 4, 5, 6. So bank 1 sensor 1. That's that one over there, okay? Also coming out there is going to be bank 1 sensor 2, okay? So that runs along the chassis leg there, and that would plug into the second Lambda sensor that goes at the back there. Now, unfortunately, because these GS300 ECUs cannot be remapped, you do have to fit those sensors in, otherwise you will eventually get a check engine light, okay? It won't come right away, but you'll get a check engine light. So that's why we've kept everything in place so you can wire up those secondary Lambda sensors. Now, what you do with that, if you've decatted, you could put a 90 degree. If you want, I could put you in touch with a company that do a Lambda fooler, and it actually plugs directly into these plugs over here. So again, really, really nice and straightforward. Obviously, one's going to be inside your vehicle. So for the IS200, you had one inside the vehicle, and you had only on the GS300 did you have this one over here, and also the IS300, you had this one over here. So IS200 had boom, boom, bank 1 sensor 1, bank 2 sensor 1, and then it had one sensor at the back there. And that's pretty much it. That's all the sensors there were. For the 2JZ versions, they had bank 1 sensor 1, bank 1 sensor 2, bank 2 sensor 1, bank 2 sensor 2. Okay, so again, nice and simple and straightforward. All 4 sensors are there. We've kept all the wires in. Okay, then lastly, popping out here is going to be your mass airflow sensor plug. Okay, now let's have a conversation about the mass airflow sensors, because this particular model is very difficult, because it's very difficult to tell them apart when you just have an engine in front of you. Okay, but the GS300 has 2 different versions. Okay, it has the early version, which was from 98 to 2000, and then it had the newer version, which was about 2000, 2001 to 2005. Okay, now if you had a whole vehicle in front of you, it'd be very easy to tell, because the later models, the 01, 2000, 2001 to 05, had a shift up, shift down button on the steering wheel. Okay, that's one of the things you can look at. The second thing that you can look at is the mass airflow sensor, okay? Now what I'm gonna quickly do is I'm gonna grab two air boxes here and we're gonna have a little look-see over here. So this is actually from an IS300, but the second gen GS300 was exactly the same. So you see they had a little tiny mass airflow sensor, same as a 3UZ or any sort of newer Toyota. Now this model that we're dealing with here, this had this type of mass airflow sensor. You probably recognize this from a 1UZ VVT-i and also a 2JZ-GE VVT-i from an Aristo. They use these, it's what I call the bullet style airflow meter, because if you actually look inside there, it looks like a bullet basically. Okay, now then, this is super important because this mass airflow sensor and this mass airflow sensor have completely different wiring. If you try to plug this harness wired as standard into a small mass airflow meter, I think you end up blowing the intake air temperature circuit, okay? So this is where it becomes super important that you guys do and understand exactly what you're dealing with, okay? There is also another way of telling. The newer versions had a power steering pressure sensor, so a 3-wire sensor, okay? So that's also another way to tell, all right? But what's super important is that you take a look at your ECU part number. You go on somewhere like Toyo DIY, you put it into the system, it'll bring up your vehicle, and then what you should be able to do is then go look in the air filter section and it'll tell you what mass airflow sensor you need for this particular engine, okay? Given that this is an early model one, okay? So again, most of the time you guys probably either are ending up with these on a crate being delivered to you. Sometimes they don't come with the mass airflow sensor and obviously you are unaware, okay? So please guys, this is probably the one example you've really got to watch out for, because there was two variations and within those two variations there was that change. So again, the wiring for the mass airflow sensor is completely different, okay? So hope and pray you got the right ECU with the right harness, and if you have, you can check the part number and make sure that you are correct. Now, there is another caveat just to make it more confusing. In Europe and the rest of the world, when we got the second generation GS300, you still had this rectangular ECU, okay? In America, when they switched over to the second gen of the second gen GS300s, in other words, around 2000, 2001, they actually switched to the wedge shape ECU. So in America, if you have an 2001 to 2005 GS300 ECU, it can actually be remapped. It's only the Europeans and the rest of the world that got done over by they kept this sort of rectangular ECU, so we can't have a remap on that, unfortunately. But that in America is really nice and easy, because if you've got a wedge-shaped ECU, you've got a small mass airflow meter. If you've got a rectangular shaped ECU, you've got a bullet style airflow meter. Us in Europe, we have to look at that part number and we have to work out whether or not we need the big one or the small one, okay? So again, super important. Obviously this customer that I'm busy with, I can give them this information. But if you're working on your own motor, then obviously you need to know that particular piece of information. Right, okay, let's move that out the way. So we've been down here, let's move along there. And just note, this gets mounted over here, okay? So first plug that pops out here is going to be your drive-by-wire plug, and that's going to plug into your throttle over there. So it'll make more sense when I have the throttle body on. You'll see the gray plug there that plugs in over there. In this case, he did give us this metal bracket that actually bolts on. So again, you'll see that when the throttle's on there, but basically it bolts underneath there on those two bolts there, and then these bolt onto the actual throttle body itself. Then after that, we have the accelerator position sensor. Okay, so although your 2JZ-GE VVT-i, whether it's IS300 or GS300, has an accelerator cable, it's actually drive-by-wire. It's not a throttle cable operated throttle body, okay? You'll see when I do the testing, you'll notice the buzzing of the throttle body, and I'll go through a bit more detail about that as well at that time when we're testing. And then lastly through here, we have our oxygen sensor here, which is a bank 2 sensor 1. So again, this plug is different, okay? These plugs are the same, so this version and this version are the same, but obviously this one is much shorter and this one is much longer. Okay, so it's pretty easy to tell what it is, but unfortunately they are the same plug, so you do need to be aware of that. Okay, right, so that is the harness, how it's laid out. So basically it goes from the ECU box over the top there, down there, and obviously the coil plugs through there. So it really is super simple. Now then, other things that you need to wire in. Number one, alternator, main cable for your alternator. Now, IS300 engine harnesses do actually come with this cable built in, okay? GS300 do not. So there would be in a separate cable on the car for that, and obviously you're gonna have to implement that over there, okay? Now, that's gonna run from there, and in your case with the IS200 or IS300, it's gonna go straight to over here for your fuse box over there. So you can see you've got your 120 amp alternator fuse, and there's a nice little post there. And if you've got the original cable, it'll be a sort of L-shaped bracket over there, okay? Now again, this is right-hand drive. If it was left-hand drive, it'd be over there, obviously. And that's the way, just same position, just on the other side, okay? Next up is gonna be your ground. So you have a look here. This is something you should have in your IS200 already. That's gonna go straight from there, underneath the battery, bolt to the chassis leg, and it actually comes out the bottom of the battery, and I've actually got the old one over here. I don't use it anymore because obviously my engines go around and they're not always in IS200 plug and play. So you'll see I've just actually bolted a big thick earth from there, and that's what this earth cable is over there. So it just runs straight from there to there. But basically in your case, from there, bolts onto the chassis, goes onto the block, okay? Obviously you have your harness earthing there and there. So those are the only two earths on the harness. Now normally you'd have a support bracket going from there to that little hole down there, okay? So that support bracket would be on there. But again, there'll be loads of space to bolt that earth to, and you're more than happy to do that. Now then, other earths that you could add on. Number one, on the gearbox of your IS200, you would have had like an earth braid going from one of the gearbox bolts to the chassis leg. I advise putting that in, it's always good. Lastly, on a right-hand drive vehicle, I think a left-hand one as well, but anyway, there's a bracket here that carries your brake booster vacuum pipe. And on there was an earth, again, I think it was a braided earthing. Anyway, it came down there and it bolted onto this side of the cylinder head. So I suggest you reinstall that as well. And that'll give you 3 decent earths. So you're gonna have the one coming directly from the battery, going onto the block. So that keeps the starter motor happy. That keeps all the current flowing directly through that main thick earth. Then again, you'll have this one from the cylinder head going through there, which helps out with the engine harness earths that go over there. And then again, you have one from the bolts of the gearbox from there to the chassis leg, and again that just helps with the big currents drawn from the starter motor, okay? Then you have your main starter motor cable, so that's your main positive that bolts on there, and that literally goes directly to your battery positive terminal over there. Really nice, simple and straightforward. And then also, sorry, that's actually this one over here. Now also on your IS200, and I've come across this numerous times, but this little cable comes out from the bottom of the fuse box and it needs to be taken to the positive of the battery. This is connecting this fuse box to the battery and basically the entire car. If you don't re-put that one on, nothing is going to work in the entire car, okay? So again, make sure that you should have this one going to the positive of the battery and your main starter power going to the positive of the battery, okay? Right, so hopefully that's covered absolutely everything. Just remember with these, the particular niche with the mass airflow sensors, so always make sure you are careful when you do that in. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get everything back together. We're going to put the inlet manifold back on again, get it all prepped up ready, and we'll pop back and start doing the testing. So we'll see you in a second. Right guys, so now back for the testing of the engine harness. And as I said, there's going to be 2 sections, one with the ignition on and one with the engine actually running. I'm going to do a quick recap of the connectors, obviously, that plug into the throttle body so you can see exactly where they go. So as I said, this one just plugs in directly over there. It's normally clipped onto there. Mine's broken off or it's been taken off so many times. There's your accelerator position sensor. So remember, even though you've got a cable, there isn't actually any connection between the cable and the throttle body, apart from a small section at the end. That you've already been through over there. There is your TPS connector. So that's plugged in over there. We've got our noise filter plugged in over there. And then we've got our charcoal canister vacuum solenoid valve plugged in over there. So that's really nice and simple, straightforward. Okay. Oh, and there's the MAF plugged in now over there, which it wasn't before. Right, so first thing we want to do, let's jump through and go through what we're actually going to be testing, and then we'll jump into the testing with the ignition on. So to start off with, we have obviously removed the immobilizers. We want to make sure that that's working correctly. So at the moment you can see we do have the security light flashing. We want to make sure when we insert the key that obviously the light goes off to make sure the immobilizer is removed. Ambient temperature, basically we're just going to go and look over at the climate control here. We should be able to see ambient temperature on the display there. Now in this case, because we're translating data from the GS300 to the IS200, it is actually reading the temperature. So that's going to go up and down as the temperature changes outside. Next up is going to be check engine light, charge light and oil pressure. So I want to see them all come up on the dash. So we search check engine light there, battery light over there and oil pressure light over there. So those are the ones we want to see come up. Obviously when we start it, we want to see them go off. So that'll be part of the starting section there. Next up is going to be reverse. So you can see I've got my reverse connector over there. I'm just going to bridge it exactly like what your gearbox is doing, and we should get that annoying beep out of the IS200 cluster to show me that from this terminals here all the way inside the vehicle, the reverse circuit is working 100%. So when you stick the vehicle in reverse with that connected, your reverse lights and everything should come on. Next up is going to be speedo. So again, because this is running a J160, we have our speed sensor plug over there. I have my little device that can output a signal, and obviously then we'll see the speedo go up on the dash as well. Just a little hint for you guys. If you obviously get it, you plug everything and you don't have a speed signal, just to give you a nice easy test, you can actually just remove the speed sensor at the back of the gearbox, get a mate to sit in the car, put the ignition on, and you can just tape a drill basically to the gear at the end of that speed sensor. If you spin the drill and you get a speed actually showing on the cluster, then clearly the issue is inside the gearbox. If you spin that and you get no speed on the cluster, then more than likely the issue is with the speed sensor itself. So it's kind of just helping you, work out where the problem lies. It's relatively straightforward, easy and simple to do. Next up is going to be OBD2 test. Now, unfortunately, our little blue friend, the OBD2 machine, she has given up the ghost after 6 years. She's done her time. So we're moving over to GTS, which is the Toyota subscription service. It's like TechStream. It is actually available to the general public. If you guys want me to do a video on it, let me know down below. I'll tell you how to get in and signed up. It's relatively cheap. I think it's €5 for a day or €300 for a year. And there's like a day, a month, day, 5 days, I think, a month, and then a year. So for someone like me, €300 a year, that's completely understandable. And I use it so much, so I would definitely see value in that. I'd probably spend more on mobile phone contracts than having access to the actual dealer level Toyota diagnostics. So again, if you want some more information about that, let me know. But unfortunately, our little blue friend has given up the ghost after 6 years, so she did her time. But yeah, we'll be moving over to the laptop now and using GTS. Okay, next up is going to be ACIS. So what I can do is I can use GTS to activate the ACIS valve. So that's this little valve over here. So you'll see we'll be able to log in and actually activate that. And it just basically moves. So you can just see it moves like that. So when I click to activate on the machine, you'll actually, on the laptop, you'll see that move along. That's ACIS. I do have a link down at the bottom of an ACIS system and how it works and what it does. It stands for Acoustic Controlled Induction System. You might know it as well as what they call variable intake runner length, because it actually varies the length of the intake runner depending on the situation. And so yeah, I've done a video on that explaining how it works, but it is on a 1UZ VVT-i or 3UZ VVT-i. But basically, I'm just explaining the principle of how it works. So effectively, you should be seeing that valve moving when you're revving up the engine in this particular case. Next up is going to be AC clutch. So again, I'm going to use GTS to activate the clutch. And also the second part is AC request. So you'll see I do have a bunch of predetermined ones down here. Just engine speed, coolant, temp, AC signal. So I'm going to press the AC button inside the car. That's going to go from off to on. That's my little test to make sure that our little MPX device is converting the signal from IS200 to GS300 to make it work. Just a heads up, the AC signal system is completely standard. So again, everything has to be connected and everything has to be working. So your pressure switch has got to be there. It's got to be connected. It's got to be working. It's got to be gassed up. Everything has got to work exactly as it would in a standard IS200. Okay. Right, so that's that. Okay, so that's all the tests with the ignition on. Then what we'll do is move on to the engine running. So what we're going to be looking for is the starter circuit. So basically, because these vehicles, whether it's manual or auto actually, they come with a neutral start switch. So I want to make sure that we've wired that correctly. So when I go to turn the key and crank to the start position, engine should turn over and start. That's basically what I'm looking for. It's that simple. Next up is drive-by-wire test. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rev the engine. Okay, so remember, like I said to you, this is a drive-by-wire system. So ETCS stands for Electronic Throttle Control System Intelligent, okay? But basically, if I do this, you can see there's nothing moving on the blade there. When I get to about 3/4, I hit a little bit of a thingy, and if you were to look inside here, it would be opening the throttle like a very small amount. So basically like an override if the throttle ever shut down, electronically speaking. So basically what it's made up of is this is your motor, that's that connector over there. So there's a clutch in there, so it's called a clutch drive-by-wire system. So the ECU activates the clutch. This is the motor that actually turns. This is your TPS, so there's gears inside here, and that actually turns the throttle blade itself, and this obviously measures that. And this is actually just an accelerator position sensor. So that's why you have your plug here. So you've got 2 signals for the accelerator position sensor, and you've got 2 signals for the TPS. So there is a sort of a safety built in, and obviously the ECU is going right. There's 2 signals moving in the same direction. If one does one thing and the other one does nothing, then obviously it knows something is wrong and it'll shut the throttle down. And what it'll do is it'll use a clutch to do that. Okay, so that's why it's called a clutch system. You won't find them on the likes of the 3UZ or newer ones. They don't have a clutch system like that. This is on the 2JZ-GE VVT-i, 1G FE with the drive-by-wire, 1UZ VVT-i, JZX110, JZX171 had it. So there was quite a few that had this system where you still had a cable attached to it. People get very confused. They think, oh, it's a cable throttle, but no, it's actually drive-by-wire. So again, you can hear that the first section of the throttle does absolutely nothing. It's got no attachment to the throttle blade at all. That is just an accelerator position sensor. Right, so that's drive-by-wire. Then I'm going to do an oil control valve test. So again, I'm going to use GTS to carry that out. The engine's basically what's going to happen is it's going to advance the cam like aggressively. So the engine's actually going to stall. So, but we want to hear it stall. That's what we're looking for in the test there. Then I'm going to do injectors and coils. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pop over there and I'm going to unplug each injector one by one. The 2 in the middle are very difficult. I'm going to try and get that prepared because obviously I do want to warm the engine up a little bit. I'll try and unplug those so that they easily lift off and on. But if I do all 5, if I can do 5, the other one is obviously there if you can hear it idling smoothly. Right, then next up we're going to look at the tacho. So basically what we want to do is look at the tachometer over there. Obviously we have the live data from the GTS, so we can compare that to that. So it should be pretty accurate, but it's 600 to 600. So there was no problem there. There's no need for any converters or anything like that to go on. Coolant temp. So again, that's why I said before we get into the running part, I'm going to warm it up a little bit because this only starts showing it probably about between 40 and 50 degrees. So I'm going to try to get it just off the needle. And then as we go through all the tests, you'll actually see it go up. So we know it is actually climbing correctly. And then diagnostics, again, we're going to pop over to GTS. We're going to show you all the codes. And more importantly, we're going to show you that there are no automatic gearbox codes. In this case, what we should have effectively is just oxygen sensor bank 1, sensor 2, and oxygen sensor bank 2, sensor 2. It's probably not going to cause a check engine light when we do actually run the vehicle because like I said, it's not something that throws up immediately. It'll let it run for a little bit and then it'll pop up a light. So that's why I said it is quite important that you do note that you do need to have those secondary oxygen sensors plugged in, or you need to have the device to fool them. If you're interested in the device, please let me know. I'll get you in contact with people that can get hold of it for you. And it just plugs straight into these. So you don't have to worry about wiring or anything like that. Just click, click, it plugs straight in. Really, really nice and easy. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the testing with the ignition on. And the first thing we want to do is we want to test the immobilizer removal, okay? If you've watched any of my other videos, you are aware that the way the Toyota and Lexus systems work is that they actually look for the key the second you insert it into the barrel. So there is actually a wire called key switch. It grounds out the ECU, which is important why the ECU has a permanent 12-volt supply. It grounds out the ECU. You'll actually hear the relay click when I insert the key. I'm going to try and keep my voice down. And what it basically does is energizes the B circuit. That B circuit actually energizes this antenna. It looks for the key. And so before I've even turned the ignition to either accessory or on, the ECU's already looked for the key, said, I'm super happy, and that's it. So that's how a standard immobilizer system works in the Toyota and the Lexus vehicles, okay? Now, obviously, this does have buttons in it, but again, they're for any old vehicle. What I'll basically do now is my plan is I'm going to insert this key into the ignition barrel and we're going to see that security light turn off. And as a matter of fact, let me see. No, I seem to be missing my keys with no buttons in. But anyway, you have to take my word for it. This button has got nothing to do with it. There is no immobilizer on there. I do leave the light connected so that passers-by, when they're walking past the vehicle, they will think you have an immobilizer. Sometimes that's good enough for someone to not try and steal your vehicle. But anyway, so as I said, the second I insert the key, you're going to see that security light go off. I'm going to try and see if I can get everything in one go, but I'm just going to push the key in. And you can actually see, even before I went in there, it already turned off, so I just popped that out. I'm going to keep quiet, listen for that relay. Probably hear it in the background there. Anyway, security light's gone off. Done. Okay, so immobilizer is completely removed. If you put any key in here whatsoever, obviously it would turn the immobilizer light off. Okay, now moving on to the next section, we're going to turn the ignition on and we're going to move over to the ambient temperature. So we should see over here, there it is, a lovely warm 14 degrees centigrade in there. Okay, right, so that's ambient temperature. Let's go over and look at, so we've got check engine light in the corner, we've got battery light, and we've got oil light. So again, exactly what we're looking for, all working and present. Next up is reverse. Let me get my other hand there. I'm gonna basically join these together. And you can hear that annoying beeping sound over there. So that again tells me the reverse circuit from there all the way inside the vehicle is 100% and working. Right, next up is speedo. So I'm just gonna quickly get this device ready. I've got to put it into test output mode. So just bear with me 1 second. Single-handedly very difficult to do. Okay, so now it's in test output mode. So in other words, it's outputting a signal that we can then test it. It's a thing on the device to basically help you find where your tacho or your speedo is. And as I connect it there, boom, you can see straight away. So put the signal in, straight away, there you go. Okay, so again, the reason I tested at the particular connector is obviously I'm making sure that the crimps inside the connector with the terminals are working 100% and so on. I'm happy before I send it out that everything from there all the way back is working correctly. Right, after that, reverse and speedo, let's go to OBD2 machines. So again, it's obviously disconnected because we turned the ignition off, but again, it is reconnecting. And you can see there, we've got all of our data busy being populated. There you go. Right, so what I can probably do is, let's take a look at something that I can manipulate there. Throttle position is 17%. I'm going to try and zoom into throttle position, and as I move the throttle, there you go, 64%. Okay. Now, do bear in mind, this is what we call the K-line communication. It's the very old type. It is incredibly slow, which is obviously why I set up these things, and I can just have the information that I need to hand, because if I don't do that, I end up with a bunch of information that slows everything down. So you can see we've got 0 RPM, 43 degrees, AC signal off, park neutral, park switch on. That's an ATMI device. It tells us in park when there's no RPM, and when it goes above a certain RPM, it tells it it's in 2, which is why I've got 2 on there as well. But that tells me the ATMI device is working correctly. Anyway, that's OBD2. Bosh. Now then, let's go on and test the ACIS. Now, do bear in mind the ACIS has a vacuum canister. If you've got a 1JZ VVT-i or 3JZ VVT-i, you'll know this one. It's underneath the intake manifold. On this one, it's this little black guy over here. So that is your vacuum canister. So it is storing a vacuum. So if you haven't started the engine in a while, you couldn't carry out this test. Obviously, I've already started it. I've done all these tests off camera to make sure everything is working before we come on to do the video. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to intake control vacuum solenoid valve. Let's pop over there. Right, now, again, I can't show you both here, but if you take a look at that little valve, there you go, fantastic. Okay, so that is working 100%, so super happy with that. We can close that down now. Right, so that is ACIS. Let's move over to AC clutch and AC request. So what I'll do first of all is we can go over to AC magnetic clutch relay. Now, as I activate this, I'm going to keep quiet and you should hear the relay clicking. And you can probably actually see the AC clutch on there kicking off. Let's see if we can see that moving. Oh, it's very difficult to see, but hopefully you can hear that. That means the ECU is controlling the AC magnetic clutch relay, and that's exactly what I am looking for in this particular case. So the last piece of the puzzle is the AC request. So again, we're going to go over to a data list over there. We'll select our cut down amount of data, and we see we've got AC signal is now off. Let's pop over to here, press the AC button, and AC signal is gone to on. Press that button off there, and AC signal is now off. So again, that's working 100%. That's exactly what I want to see, that obviously when you press the AC button inside the car, that the ECU is able to interpret that data through our MPX device to tell the ECU that it needs to turn on the aircon. Remember, the ECU is still taking other information. There is a pressure switch involved in this, so if the pressure is too high or too low, the AC will not turn on. So again, remember, you need to make sure that your AC system is 100% working stock and that everything is plugged in, because we are relying on a complete original working AC system for all of this to work. We've put everything into the harness. You guys need to take care of the vehicle on that side. Okay, right, so now that that's done, again, what I want to do is we're about 42 degrees, so I'm going to warm it up a little bit more, because as you can see, we're not off the needle yet for the coolant. I want to get it just off the needle. We'll pop back, and then we'll carry on with the rest of the test with the engine running. So, see you in a second, guys. Right guys, so we are back now and I've let it warm up a little bit so you can actually see our coolant temperature now is sort of just above the bottom line over there. So I don't want to get too hot. You'll see it's about 52 degrees. So you see what I mean? It doesn't really get up to temperature. Doesn't really start showing until it's sort of above 45, 50 degrees basically from there. Okay, so as I said, for the engine running, we're going to do starter circuit, drive-by-wire test, oil control valve VVT-i, that's going to make the engine stall, so we have to restart it again. Injectors and coils, tacho, coolant temp, and diagnostics at the end. Okay, so bear with me a second. Let's jump on the key and let's get this thing started. So 3, 2, 1. She's all working fine. So let's go over to the drive-by-wire test. Right, so that's gravy. Right, oil control valve test. VVT-i control bank 1. Right, so let's up again. Right, so that's the oil control valve test. Let's pop over to our injectors and coils and let's start pulling them off one by one. So we've got cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3, tri-cylinder 4. There you go. Cylinder 5. And cylinder 6. Gosh, all cylinders are firing 100%. Let's go to tacho. So you can see our tacho on just over 1,000. We go to our live data list. All of that. See, it's just over 1,000. So that's pretty accurate there. I'll give it a bit of a rev so you guys can see it go up and down. There you go. Right, so that's coolant temperature. So we've gone to about 62 degrees now. So you can see our coolant temperature has moved from the bottom line and it's up to the top over there. So that is fantastic. Okay, right. So let me just kill the fuel pump on this so we can get it to run dry. Carry on with the dive. Rightio. Okay, so let's move on to the last section. That's going to be diagnostics, okay? Right, so as I said to you, if I am correct, what we should see on here is just 2 codes in relation to the oxygen sensors for bank 1 sensor 2 and bank 2 sensor 2. So let's have a look at that now quickly. Again, it's not the fastest communicating system, this old K-line stuff, so just bear with it a second. Obviously, you hear the throttle motor buzzing in the background. So again, I've had a couple of people notice that they haven't ever noticed that their IS200 did exactly the same thing. Right, so there you go. Got P0141, P0161, oxygen sensor heater circuit bank 1 sensor 2, oxygen sensor heater circuit bank 2 sensor 2. What you'll notice here is a distinct lack of any automatic gearbox codes. So again, our Atomy device is working 100%. It's emulating all the signals that the automatic gearbox would be giving to the ECU. And lastly, those 3 little resistors are emulating the last 3 signals that couldn't be done on a PCB board in that little tiny little black box that you see over there. Okay, so again, this is what we want to see. We should have absolutely no codes on here. Once these oxygen sensors are plugged in, obviously that would then mean have 0 codes. Now, obviously when you saw the tacho and everything working, you saw the check engine light was off, the battery light was off, and the oil light was off. So those are all working. But as I said, the secondary oxygen sensors, the codes don't usually come up straight away. So the light probably is not going to come up straight away, but it will come up later. So you do need to plug those in or use the emulators. Again, if you get in touch with us, we'll put you in touch with the company that can provide them for you. Okay. Right, so from my side, everything is working 100%. I'm super happy with it. Everything that's wired in is working correctly. The engine starts, she runs smoothly, no dramas there whatsoever. Customer obviously knows now which mass airflow sensor he needs, which is the big bullet style one, not the small one. And yeah, everything else should be relatively straightforward. He knows now where everything plugs in, where everything goes together. Okay, right, so again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask down below. You can comment down below. You can send us a message on Facebook as well if you want to get hold of us. If you send us a message to Facebook now, you'll see you get put through to a video which explains the level of detail that we do need from you guys before we can move forward and do any quotes. So again, I put that together to try and sort of minimize, 20 messages backwards and forwards from there. If you'd like me to go through the GTS, I know a lot of you are used to TechStream. A lot of copies of those available online, but if you want like a genuine copy of something that I feel is not really all that expensive, again, the nice thing is you can use it for one day and just pay €5. So if you want to diagnose your car, you don't have to go and spend €300 and have it for a whole year. You can just pay €5 and have it for a whole day, which isn't even £5, obviously. So yeah, very, very useful. I'm using a Tatrix Open Port 2 connector cable. According to the website, you can use a Mongoose Pro cable as well. Again, these are not particularly expensive cables, guys. You don't have to have like this really £200, £300, £400 cable to make it work. These are really cheap cables if you've got yourself a laptop. This is working on Windows 11 as well. There's no problems with that whatsoever. I haven't had to do any funny things to make it work. I basically just had to create an account on toyotatech.eu, download the software, pay for a subscription, plug into the car, and I can do everything that a dealer can do from there. I can see all of the data. I can carry out active tests. I can do the whole shebang and carry out everything you need. It also automatically detects the vehicles as well. So again, if you want, I can do a video on how to install it, how to use it, how to get it set up, and obviously what I use over here to get it working. But anyway, I'm waffling on. Anything else you guys want to know, please let me know down in the comments below. I'll try and get to everyone as quickly as I can. Do better. I mean, only on my own with one little guy that's helping. So again, I try and get through to everybody as soon as I can. But yeah, that's why I made the video, so that you guys can give me the information that I need up front, and then cut down on sending, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 messages backwards and forwards trying to get all the information that we need out of you. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Supposed to feel.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life. I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, put your hand to the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean and I bring it to the mad light. Ain't got time to kill, I got time to feel, I took the red pill, I know life's short.